Just checking if my screen is visible. Okay.
Bhavna, should I admit some of the people who are waiting?
Yes, please. Can you do that for me on an ongoing basis, please?
Yeah.
A very warm welcome to all of you who have made the time to come here this evening. I'm delighted to host the third webinar in our series of Compassionate Caring. Compassionate Caring is our series of videos and webinars that on behalf of Caregiver Saathi, we conduct to have experts over who can help us, people who are caregivers, navigate our caregiving journeys. The session today is titled, I'm sorry about my screen. The session today is titled Money Matters During Caregiving and After. One would reckon that money matters are increasingly an important aspect of our lives, and some of us are afraid.
Roger.
I can certainly speak for myself that when it comes to money matters, sometimes I freeze and sometimes I get upset with myself and angry because I'm not too sure I fully understand what money and managing money is all about. I do think it is an absolutely essential element of our overall well-being. And the only way to get across our fear and insecurity and anxiety around anything, especially money matters, starts from getting to know what it is, build an understanding, and take the first few steps. This webinar is an attempt for us to get a handle around money matters, perhaps an overview, and take the first few steps so that money matters cannot come in the way of our caregiving or us leading our full lives. So with that, I would like to take a little while to introduce to you Caregiver Saathi. Caregiver Saathi is our attempt to create an ecosystem of well-being and healing for the primary caregiver. Family caregivers of those navigating terminal illness, chronic, or any other life-limiting condition have their unique challenges. They are multiple, manifold, and sometimes difficult to comprehend. So what we are attempting to do is to break it down and create a system or a support system so that caregivers can be supported through their caregiving journeys and hopefully even beyond. What we wish to do is create an environment of well-being by empowering the caregiver, helping the caregiver and the care receiver or the patient lead full lives. How do we do this? We do this through a four-pronged strategy. One is create a psychosocial support system like easy access to information through our website, app, etc., and relevant content. Create healing circles. Healing circles are our support group meetings, one-on-one counseling, and even coaching for caregivers so that they can navigate their caregiving journeys with ease. The second is that we build capability for caregivers, sometimes even well-wishers of caregivers through learning programs. The third is leveraging technology-based support to support caregivers and their well-being. This could be through app, through the website, and many other technology-based solutions. So as technology evolves, I suppose we will also need to evolve. And finally, looking at volunteer programs that can help provide respite care. There are many resources for you, whether you are a caregiver or a well-wisher of a caregiver. So we have videos, articles, and information through the website and a monthly newsletter. Social media, we are currently present on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We also have a community-based interaction through a Facebook group and our WhatsApp groups. We run regular video series, something called Gentle Warriors. These are caregiver stories where caregivers are invited to tell us their experience. So if you are a caregiver or you know someone who's a caregiver and who would be willing to share their stories, then we believe that this can be hugely empowering for those active caregivers who are currently in their journeys. Compassionate Caring, and this is a series in that, which is we have videos and webinars by experts who can help us become compassionate caregivers, where compassion is not just for the care receiver, but for ourselves as well. Finally, we have a Caregiver Sathi app, which is designed to help you organize yourself, seek support from well-wishers, as well as be able to access the information and resources that can help you through your caregiving journey, because one of the first challenges that a caregiver faces is finding the time. And we hope that organizing oneself and managing your time can help you find the necessary time for yourself, which will be so critical to compassionate caring. I'd like to spend a little time on what we believe is well-being. So our overall well-being and of late well-being and resilience are all buzzwords. The COVID times have brought them up like never before. And we have our own take on what well-being is. So we believe that there are many elements of well-being. Currently, we focus on 7 key elements of well-being. More on this in our subsequent webinars. Stay tuned in. But we believe that if we break down well-being into its various elements, then it becomes easier for us to understand and to be able to take action. So if there are 7 elements of well-being as shown in this graphic, it could be physiological, psychological, social, spiritual, life and work purpose and creative expression, and of course, above all, financial and legal well-being. Stress is caused when there is an imbalance in the well-being, and unaddressed chronic stress could actually lead to various, even physical illnesses, not just mental health issues. Today, we are focusing on financial well-being, and I am delighted to introduce to you Gaurav Suri, who has been in the financial services sector for over a decade and a half, is currently the senior executive vice president, of UTI Mutual Funds, and also on the advisory board for Caregiver Sathi. We have requested him to take us through an understanding of financial well-being so that we can take the necessary steps to building our own overall well-being. I'd like to make some admin announcements. We will spend the next 60 to 70 minutes having a discussion regarding financial well-being, the world of caregivers, and how is that related to financial well-being. There are 3 parts of this webinar. Part 1 is the presentation. We will request all participants to listen and share their thoughts and questions on the chat box. Your questions will be incorporated during the question and answer session. We would like to have an interactive question and answer session, and during that time, you can use the feature of raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. And finally, we will have feedback and suggestions. May I request you to keep yourselves on mute to minimize the background noise. This session is being recorded, and we have taken all appropriate security precautions as you get in so that there can be no violation of privacy. While we are recording this webinar, we will use some sections of the presentation for sharing later. However, no section of the participant interaction will be disclosed publicly. So please feel free to share your questions as you would like and ask as much as you wish to. If there are some questions that are not addressed, we will try and address them through further communication. All right, with that, I will like to introduce Gaurav Suri. Gaurav.
Hey, good evening, Bhavna. Thank you. May I request you to put up the presentation while I talk about myself?
Right, I will do that.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time this evening. I'm a bit nervous about this presentation, but I do hope that I can make it worth your while for being here and resolve some anxiety, some issues you might have around money matters. The topic given to me was money matters during caregiving and beyond. I think it boils down to the element of financial well-being. And why I think it's important is because issues around money make us diffident and uncertain about our future. If we learn to deal with it, we have that one less element to deal with. By no means I'm an expert in this field. I'm not qualified to give advice. However, this is some part of it is my own journey, my own relationship with money. And I thought that I would share this over the next 45-50 minutes. A quick introduction about myself. I come from a armed forces background, having grown up in small cities. I think the entire focus from my parents or everyone else was to say, look at your academics, make your future, don't worry about anything else. There was hardly any conversation around money. I went on to do my engineering, my MBA, I studied finance. But for the first decade or so, I can say that, and pardon my language, I was really stupid about managing my own money. And I think it's essential when I talk about this that we should not be hesitant in talking about money or having conversations around money around the dinner table with everyone in the family, because as much as physical well-being is important, I think financial well-being is an important factor in all our lives. I think the practical application of this is what I would want to focus upon. Some of it might seem very basic for you, so treat it as a brush up and just heightened or raising consciousness around these things. I think money worries, whether be it around medical expenses for a lot of you, or say future education needs for children, those of you who have children, leaving a legacy or an inheritance, how to manage that, or just managing your day-to-day affairs or monthly expenses. I think all of these are cause for concern or give sleepless night. And therefore, since you're already time stressed or you're emotionally and physically overwhelmed, my big suggestion for all of you would be that seek trusted advice, seek a good partner, a financial advisor who can help you in this journey. However, my attempt today, if you can go to the next slide, would be to just raise consciousness so that you can have the conversation. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Sorry.
Yeah. I think so from all studies or from all research which I've seen, and this might not be true for each and every one of you, but generally across caregivers, most of the caregivers report significantly lower financial well-being. And I think it creates another kind of stress. Most of the times, from what I understand from Bhavna and whatever literature I've read, the caregiving role falls upon women, and women are conflicted between, uh, continuing to work if they're in employment and providing caregiving. Uh, Oftentimes, this result in hasty decisions being taken, them giving up employment, not knowing the unintended consequences of this. There are a lot of work-related benefits which go off, and you don't factor it in your finances, and it causes an impact. Uh, Many times, added to this, in your sheer helplessness with the situation you are in, on how to deal with it, you also end up spending a lot more money or dipping into your savings for the well-being of your caregivers. Ideally, being a marketer, I would want to customize what I have to say for all of you. However, as a quick dipstick, I wanted to do a quick poll at this moment. Really get a sense of the group on where do we consider ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10 on financial well-being. So if we could launch the poll, so we'll all get a sense of where we are.
So there is first an existing poll which says, who do you identify with the most? If you can respond to that poll, please. Sorry, is that?
It's already closed, Bhavna. I think it's
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Anish. So, sorry, we have relaunched that poll. So if all of you could respond to who do you relate with, and then we get to the next question, please.
It says...
I had to stop that one. I'm just launching the one that Gaurav referred to.
Okay. Right. So now there are two questions. The question one is, how do you rate your financial well-being on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is completely unmanageable, finances are messed up, and 10 is absolutely in control? So if you could respond to that. And then there is a second question. So if you scroll down, you will be able to see the second question, and you can respond to that question as well. It's good to see that nearly half of you have responded. Some are perhaps thinking. Let's just go with your instinctive response.
Yeah, I think there's no right or wrong answer for this. I think the attempt is to first get reassured that we are not alone in this. There are a lot of other people who are in the same boat. I can tell you this from my own experience when I started this journey. Plenty of times, I think we just overwhelmed with this complexity of this world and think that we'll make a fool of ourselves or get embarrassed if somebody was to talk about money. I think it's okay. We shouldn't force. So 50% is good enough.
All right.
A lot of you have said complex documentation, lack of knowledge, poor understanding of finance, which is good. So if you can come back to the presentation, I think most of the time, research amongst all caregivers has shown that this state of financial well-being or this hesitation to talk about money is with respect to people's fear of making mistakes with money. It's to do with trouble finding the appropriate financial documents. Can I request you to run the presentation, please? Yeah. It's also sometimes when it comes to inheritance or passing of financial responsibilities, it's also to do with legal documentation. And I think today I would have, next slide, I would have walked a mile with you if by the end of the session I can make you feel more in control of money matters. If at the end of this session you get a sense that you can handle the future and money is not a case to be worried about, I would have, I think, moved some distance along with you. And bear with me as I take you on this journey. So I think I'll start off with, next slide if you go to, with the fundamentals. And this might seem very basic for you, but I think we undermine the power of everyday choices and daily habits which we make and the repeated actions we do, because small and tiny gains really add up to something very significant when it comes to money. And therefore, it's not mysterious or magical like Jim Rohn has said. It is a natural consequence of consistently applying basic fundamentals. And we'll try and refresh and revise those fundamentals as we go along. The first case, I'm sure all of you have banking account, savings account. And the thing around it is, I've seen behavior manifest in strange ways. Even like I said, when we were working or when I started on this journey, when it came to finances, my first insurance policy or my first investment option, I literally ended up signing on blank forms. My banker or my advisor would come to me, asked me to sign. I was so fearful of making a fool of myself that I ended up signing a blank form. And here is something which we should never do, because this is about our own money. We should fill in clearly our nomination, because life is uncertain. If the money was to be transferred, then it should be clear on who gets a right of access to it. We should have at least 3 to 6 months of emergency or operating fund. Whatever our monthly expenses, 3 to 6 months of that should be lying in the savings account. Even if we don't have it right now, no need to get worried or hassled. I think there is no right time. Today is a good time to start on this journey. As long as you know you have to head there, I think you'll reach there. Also, the current situation we are in, we never anticipated it, whether as individuals or as businesses. However, if we had filled in all our contactability details, namely our email ID and our phone number, which has become a part of our identity, we would have been able to seamlessly carry on our transactions or money matters without any issue. And I think it's essential because, again, from the place I sit, I see 50, 70% of our customers still not giving in all these details, whether it's their email ID or phone numbers, or if they are getting intermediated, which means they're getting advice, they fill in blank forms. So please ensure that this task is done. The rest of the stuff, I'm sure all of you are aware about the mandatory documents, which is our PAN card, Aadhaar card, passport, address proof. Many a times these become the first barrier towards your journey of looking at money or making decisions around money. So get them out of the way. I think get all these documents updated. And those of you who have children, ensure that these documents are made for them at the appropriate time, so that when the transition happens or when they come of age to manage their own money, they are all set for it. Next slide, please. I think that being done, we start off from the very basics of it, which is, creating a budget, pretty much like what the finance minister does for the country. We do it for our own homes and for our own ecosystem. We write down all our sources of income. For those of us who are working, we have our salaries. If we have houses on rent, or the rental income, if you have deposits, the interest coming from that. Parallelly, make a note of all our expenses to get a sense of how much money or outflows happen every month, be it the electricity bill, be it the rentals, be it the education fees, etc. And by and large, it's a thumb rule, but we follow a 50-30-20 rule. And what do I mean by that? we break up our expenses 50% on needs, 30% on wants, and keep aside 20% for savings. Now, this can vary. This is just an indicative rule. And why I say we must have a balance between needs and wants, because most of the time, if we are in such situations, then we end up depriving ourselves of enjoying our money, and that has unintended psychological consequences. I've seen it uh, personally and up close. Uh, and I think it's a good place to start. The other piece is be a little bit selfish. I think pay yourself first. Most of us, when we start on this journey, we end up making excuses or procrastinating that I don't have any money left. I've spent everything. Normally, we look at our income and we look at our expenses, and whatever is left, we say that's savings. But I think if we can invert this equation by paying ourselves first, which means if we can keep aside 20%, even start with as less as 5 or 10% as our savings, and the balance we use for our expenses, I think we would have gotten off to a good start. Next, I think if we are the wage earner in the family, and many of you might be, I think how do we protect our economic capacity or capability of earning money? We have to create the safety net. So therefore, something as basic as medical insurance, because the expenses around medical expenses are increasing, and protecting the earning capability of yourself. Something was to happen to you. How do you ensure that your loved ones or people dependent on your income continue to get the economic benefit? By a term insurance, which basically means that we protect our earning capability. And this is slightly strange or alien concept in the Indian context, because back in the early days when we had a joint family system, we all believe in fate, or we are fatalistic, and the joint family system actually acted as the net or the safety net. But given urbanization or nuclear families, we have no one to depend but ourselves. Therefore, it's essential that we invest in this. The next stuff is, I think we should know, if we have income, that there are tax rules. If we are familiar with that, we don't get into, or we don't force ourselves into situations which become cumbersome. I mean, when I started this journey, March is the time when you file for your taxes, and if you're working, I didn't realize that one could save in a certain instrument. I ended up making a huge investment in March, little knowing that it'll come to haunt me every March. And I was literally left with no money at the end of the month because of this silly mistake. If I had made the effort to study this and started that journey from the beginning of financial year in April, I think it would have been less cumbersome. The last piece is, I think, because you are dealing with so many instruments and money, it's essential that we keep all of this together in some place safe, whether it's an Excel sheet or a notebook, and people around you know about this. Today, there is a provision because of your PAN card. The National Securities Depository creates a account statement. So some of you who are not aware of this, we can provide links. It gets sent to you in your email, and all your investments, be it insurance or other pieces, are sent to you through this account statement. So it's a good stock check of all your money related pieces. Can we move to the next slide? I think here what I want to do is introduce you to this fine difference between saving versus investment. In our lives, I think we use these terms fungibly. A lot of us, when we talk about investments, we say, हाँ, मैंने fixed deposit में invest किया हुआ है, या I've invested here. But those are savings. Savings is really the money you put aside, or you're accumulating for future needs. But when you put that money to work to earn a potential profit, that is what is called investing or investment. And I think that's a fine difference we need to appreciate. And I'll try and illustrate to you through a small example and why that is important as I go through my presentation. But if you move to the next slide, I think this is just a way we are blindsided, or we're led by inertia on how we look at money. This is just an example of, if you were to spend $150 on coffee, every week, and suppose the price of that coffee goes up by 10% every year, across 30 years, we would have spent close to 12 odd lakhs. But if you were to invest the same money in a financial instrument which generates 12% returns, we would have earned about 53 lakhs. And that's the difference between, savings versus investment, if I, could make it more clear. Going ahead, I think all of us here, now I'm going to quickly introduce you to some terminology so that you're familiar. Everyday parlance, especially people in Mumbai, are a lot more active around this. They hear terms like, if you can go to the next slide, the market is up, the market is down. And we hear these phrases more often. Now, what exactly is the market? I think so. You would have heard about the sabji mandi or the car market or the dealer where you exchange cars. The financial market is really a place which is regulated by a financial regulator and where buying and selling of financial instruments happen, which is either stocks or bonds. And I'll explain to you about some of these terms. But broadly, the biggest exchanges in India are National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange. And this is just to get you familiar. You really don't have to go directly here, and I'll tell you why, because there's a lot more risk associated. If you don't have the time and inclination to study this place, it's best avoided. But you should be aware when people talk about market, it's not an alien concept. What is a market? Going on to the next slide, the various types of investments. When we look at various types of investments, the first piece, like I said, your savings bank account is like a cash investment or cash equivalent. So all the money which is in low interest earning kind of deposit, by corollary means that there's low risk associated with it. There's liquidity, which means that you have access to this money, which could be things like bonds or certificates. These are cash and cash equivalent. A bond is really something which, if I can explain, it's like a IOU. If I lend money to somebody and that person promises to pay me back that money along with some additional interest at maturity, that is what is a bond. So most of the time, companies are lend money and they are the issuers of bonds, or the government is also an issuer of bonds. They promise certain returns. So these are also safe instruments unless until the business gets bust. So there is a gradation of this. So the government is the safest bond issuer here. And then there are stocks. Stock is really a share of a company. So all the products which we consume on an everyday basis, which can be sold or bought, their unitary value is in terms of a share, which is listed on the stock exchange. Now, stocks are risky assets because we won't have full information about any company. So I would like to introduce at this point in time something called mutual funds, which is really pooling of money from large number of investors to invest in stocks or bonds. And I'll introduce that to you probably in the next slide. And there are other investment options like real estate. All of us are familiar with it, but it's really beyond the psychological well-being of owning real estate. There is no real financial reason to over invest in this. There are commodities which are very risky. They go through their cycle. And for some of us who are very evolved or passionate about this subject, there are arts and collectibles which also have values. Sometimes we overlook the value of antiques and art. I think we should appreciate that they also have a value and we should care for these. Going ahead, mutual fund is a step between, like I said, between how do you manage risk and why it's important to manage your investments. So mutual funds are vehicles which are created for retail investors like you and me, where you pool money from a large number of people. So if 20 of us were attending this seminar, if we were to pool 1,000 rupees each, we give it to an expert. Those experts are fund managers in mutual fund company. They are backed by large research teams. They pick and choose stocks or shares with the possibility of generating profit for you. And that's how they invest on your behalf. These are more very transparent. They're regulated by the Stock and Exchange Board of India, which is the regulator. And it's a good vehicle to build your investments in the marketplace. One of the tools to do this, on how do you use it in a risk hedging manner, in a more disciplined manner, is something called systematic investment plans. It's nothing but like a recurring deposit which you have in banks. Every month on a fixed day, you put aside some money which gets invested. And I think it's important to know what side of inertia you are on, whether you are procrastinating or you have taken this step to start this journey. Amongst the assets which I showed you, if you go to the next slide, I think over a longer period, especially when you look at large goals over a longer horizon, equity seems to be the best placed. When I say equity, therefore the underlying stocks or shares which mutual funds invest in are best placed to give you returns over a longer period of time. These are unprecedented times, so here gold is also seen to be giving equal amount of or higher returns compared to equity. But this doesn't happen. This happens very rarely. Normally, it is equity in 10 to 15 years. You rarely lose money, but in a lot of other investments, you might not make that kind of a money. And why it's important, I'll introduce to some terms. If we go on to the next slide, the first, I think, rule of the game in investment is about risk and return. Uh, I think investment is like a long journey which we undertake, a road journey. And on various routes, we can go to a destination taking various routes. There are potential traffic delays, roadblocks, and we encounter all of this. We don't know whether it'll pan out the way we have planned it. And risk and return are just the trade-offs you make. So returns is the money you expect to on your investment, and risk is the chance that your actual return will differ or will actually pan out. And the more return you seek, the more risk will be undertaken. Now, most of the times when we talk about risk and return, a lot of people assume that high returns or a high risk instrument really means an infinite upside with limited downside. My capital will be protected, but I might get a huge killing. And this happens normally in good times when the market is headed up, or people are making money. Even your driver, your neighbor, everyone becomes your advisor, and they tell you of good opportunities to invest. But they don't tell you that there is a chance that you lose this money if things don't turn out the way you had planned them. So it's important that you make this balance, you seek this balance when you're investing. And this is a trade-off which one must be aware of. So if you go to the next slide, if you were to put all our instruments which we spoke about in a risk versus return kind of a horizon. Next slide, please. Shares are the one which have the highest potential of return, but they are also the most riskier assets. The way to manage this risk is to give it time. So over a period of times, suppose you look at 10-year or a 15-year horizon, there are very little chances. There are 90 to 95% chance that you'll be in the money and you'll not lose your money in such instruments. But this is the trade-off you'll make. So if you put in cash, I'll tell you what is the downside if you stay in cash. There is something called inflation which eats into it. And so if you go to the next slide, inflation is nothing but the increase of prices and goods and services over a period of time. So whatever you consume, the cost of that goes up, and that eats into the buying power or the purchasing power of your money. So every year, with every passing year, your ability to purchase the same good decreases if you are not growing your money. So if I had $100 and I didn't invest it, or if I don't grow that money, and if the cost of buying this cup of coffee at the starting point was 100 and the next year it became 110, with 100 rupees, I wouldn't be able to buy the same cup of coffee. So therefore, it's essential, if you go to the next slide, that we look at this balance, we seek this balance, and we look at investments. So we should fight shy of this, but we should make this effort to get friendly and familiar with this and put some money for investing. The basic principle is we should actually grow our money as much, if not more, than inflation, so that the buying power, the purchasing power of what money you have remains intact, and you're able to utilize that wealth or utilize that money over a period of time. This just shows that if you had 1 lakh rupees and if the inflation was 4% or 5%, in 25 years' time, that 1 lakh would be equivalent to 36,000 odd rupees and 27,000 rupees at the end of 25 years. That's what inflation would do to you. So if you are not investing it, you won't be able to buy the same thing in 25 years' time. That's why it's essential that you make it work and grow. The next concept when it comes to investment is one of diversification. And this, knowingly, willy-nilly, we would have all been party to it. When we start on this journey, in Indian households, we buy gold, we put money in banks, we put money in PPF, we put money in post office. And these are good strategies. Without putting thought to it, we would have diversified. And it's essential that we do it across these asset classes, because over a period of time, you are not sure of which one will work and what will give you the returns you desire. And all of these assets go through the cycles. So if you diversify, that means you don't put all your eggs in one basket, but you put your money across these pots. There are chances that you will sleep peacefully at night. Related to this concept, so one is about putting your money in different pots, which is about diversification. The related concept to this is of asset allocation. It is just the balancing the reward and risk, which I spoke about earlier, the trade-offs you make. If you go to the next slide. So across these asset classes, since we know the risk and knowing our own appetite, are we okay with losing some money, or are we okay to put aside this money for a longer period of time, say 10 years or 15 years? We should be able to put it in equity assets or shares. And that's the trade-off we make, but that's the asset allocation we make with our wealth. And we should be doing this in a considered manner, because that's the only way we'll be able to generate wealth. The secret sauce of this, really, if we go to the next slide, is really how much you are putting aside, which is your savings. So the more you put, the more you'll make. The longer you'll put this money, which is time, the more you'll make. And the last piece is compounding, which is related to time. And this gives you an illustration. So suppose you're putting aside 10,000 rupees every year for the next 10 years, and your returns on those investments were 8% or 10% or 12%. The money you would have put aside is 12 lakhs. In the first case, your investment value or your returns would be 18 lakhs. But if you were getting 12% returns, you would have made 22 lakhs in the same period. The same money, if you leave it for 20 years and you continue on this journey, it would, at 12% returns, it would become 92 lakhs. An investment or a saving of 24 lakhs would have grown to 92 lakhs. And that's really the power of going on this journey, keeping at it regularly, keeping the discipline of putting aside this money every day. There are simple thumb rules I like to introduce. The first is what I spoke about. What is the difference between 8% and 10% and 12% returns? Next slide, please. It's the rule of 72. So if you want to know how many years would it take to double your money, the rule of 72 helps. So if it is, you're earning 6% in an instrument, then it would take 72 divided by 6, 12 years for you to double that money, and so on and so forth. So if it is 18%, that means you double your money in 4 years. But at 18%, you also carry a high risk with that money, and that's the balance you are seeking always. The rule of 100 really says, people have this dilemma. How much should I invest in risky assets or shares or stocks or mutual funds? And really the thumb rule for this, and this has to be fine-tuned basis your specific circumstance or instance, but it's really 100 minus your age is the kind of thumb rule you have for investing in equities, which is what you should look at. Coming to the really to the fag end of the presentation. Now, what do you do once you know all of these things? I think the starting point is we must fix our budget. Uh, it's imperative. We get tempted sometimes to spend ahead of earning, but we don't realize that credit cards, instruments like credit cards and all, have such a high interest rate that we get into a debt trap, and it can be killing on our finances and cause unmitigated tension. So we just need to avoid it. Uh, I have this from personal experience on how, because of online buying at home, at a click of a button, we order from Amazon. And my advice to you is that keep it in the cart. Don't click on the payment at that point in time. Wait for 5-6 days. More often than not, you realize that you actually don't need that stuff, and you will uh, really not, end up paying for it. So that's a good way to manage your money. I think the next step is we're hesitant because we are unsure of what it might reveal. We are hesitant to put down our goals on paper, but it's essential because I think once we start on this journey, uh, we must try, and if we are doing our budgeting, like I said, we know our expenses, we know our long-term goals. It's essential to put down our goals on a piece of paper because it also helps in creating this architecture, this financial plan of your wealth creation for any advisor as well. So stuff like I need 1 lakh rupees for my kids' education in the next 10 years, or I would need rupees 10,000 on ongoing medical expenses uh, 5 years from now. That's what I foresee. Or I will stop working and therefore I need a regular monthly outflow from 2030. These are goals which we should write down. And I think what it helps to do is it helps us plan whatever wealth or whatever money we have, and starts putting it in those buckets. It's also essential that we attach every investment to a goal. What we end up doing as individuals is, when we ask, okay, how much money are you saving? You really look at the entire kitty as one large pool, but realize that, events in life are not fungible. You might have a kid going to a college. At the same time, somebody could possibly fall ill. And at the same time, you might have planned for a holiday. All of these three are different goals and they have to be executed at the same time. However, if you don't plan for it, one thing gets sacrificed at the cost of another. And this results in unnecessary, again, psychological trauma. So attach an investment to every goal. The next piece is really behavior led. So one way to automate your savings, like I said, pay yourself first, be selfish. And that's the tool I was introducing, the systematic investment plan. It's really transferring of inertia from your side to investments. The minute you receive income, so whether it's end of the month or first week of the month, at the same time, if you sign up for this kind of instrument, this money gets debited. So it's, it kind of goes under the radar and it is building over a period of time. And we've seen this, strangely enough, when we look at folios of our customers, the people who've really made money, who are not swayed by, advice, random advice, or act on their own, are people who've stayed in the investments for a long time, or sometimes it's people who are dead and their family discovers that they've actually inherited a huge legacy. So this is a good way of doing a behavioral trick, that you automate your savings. I think given the challenges you might have, the physical and the emotional challenge of caregiving, it's important to seek trusted advice. And there are tons of trusted advisors. And I'm sure Caregiver Sathi can help in this by shortlisting a set of advisors who will help you on this journey, who can help you build your portfolios. But it's essential that I think the reason for this conversation is that you can have a conversation with the financial advisor. You can ask the right questions. You should know what is happening to your money. And it's essential that you do it and review this periodically with the trusted advisor. Normally once in 6 months or once a year, not every day. We are I think, led by anxiety around our money. And the other important time is near goals. Uh, Suppose I had a kid and who was supposed to go to a college next month. This time was unpredictable, right? Now, if I had been saving in an equity kind of asset, it would have shrunk by 30%. So closer to your goal timelines, it's essential that you shift your money from riskier assets to less risky assets. And therefore, this review piece helps. So it always keeps you in check and balance and saying, okay, this is a goal I had set for 5 years from now. It's 1.5 years or it's 1 year to that goal. I have accumulated so much. Now I should shift this money to a riskier asset so that I have access to this money when I need it. I think last piece or the second last piece before the end of my presentation is around how do you choose this advisor? When we are looking for a financial advisor, what do we do? I think the first piece, if you go to the next slide, please, is I think you need to have a few conversations, and this requires, so this is a good time invested. You shouldn't be wasting too much of money and trying to do too much around your money, but look for a person who can help you. I think the things you look for is by having conversations, seeing if the person has the patience, because even financial decisions in our societies are a gendered role. So normally women are treated with some kind of contempt by men, or they're relegated to say, you're not good at maths, or you won't be able to handle money, let me do it. But I think this is precisely what you should look for in a financial advisor. Are they patient enough about your questions? Are they listening to you on what are your concerns and what are your money concerns? Are they transparent about how they will go about planning for your wealth? The other piece to do is do a background check. I think there is no harm. You shouldn't be embarrassed in asking them how do they keep abreast of the various products that are there in the market. What are the professional qualifications they have? There is something called CFP, which is a certified financial planner, which makes people qualified to give advice. And you should ask people whether they have a CFP qualification. How many customers do they have? What is their experience in helping build wealth? Ask for references. Talk to the references. I think it's essential to talk to other people to reassure yourself on how does this person behave. He is not promising the moon or the earth, or he or she really cares. And what is their approach? Finally, at the end of the day, investment is about generating returns. So what is their approach to beating the market in that sense, or creating wealth for you? How do they do it in a manner which helps you sleep well at night and not be worried about money? Are they truthful about how are they going to earn? Finally, they are not in this business to do it for charity. So where do they earn their money from? Do they earn it from commissions? Are they going to charge you fees for it? Because you end up paying, say you have a medical exigency, you go to a doctor and pay for that. So you shouldn't hesitate in paying for good financial advice also. But it's essential that you know the cost of getting this advice. Also, is the person not patient and getting into a hard selling approach versus a consultative process, which means if you're not comfortable with a certain instrument, if you're not comfortable with knowing about it, they don't end up recommending it. I think it's important that you are in control of this decision. And I think that's the key part in this decision. And I think it is important that my recommendation would be that you look for a trusted partner so that they can help manage your finances, that is, grow your wealth, also minimize the taxes. So I think these are essential skills which are required for this. And pretty much, I think, coming to the end of what I have to say in summary, in conclusion, I would say, I think your financial stability comes first. And I think one shouldn't be shy of this. And if you go to the next slide, Bhavna, I think I'm saying, well, you create a budget for your family, your ecosystem, look for ways to cut expenses, boost savings, even a little bit for yourself, for your own gratification, for your own fun. I think it's important. You do it. don't take an unmanageable debt for yourself, which means don't get into situations which you can't get yourself out of it. It might be tempting at times to spend ahead of earning, but it's a trap. I think stay away from it, especially if you've given up employment. Then all the more reason that uh, you don't get into this space. I think next piece is, like I said, it's a tough one. It's a very hard decision. I know, especially for a lot of women, they get into this conflict of cutting work because they have caregiving responsibility, but know that there are unintended consequences of this. There are benefits uh, which come from your employer, which you lose, and you have to fund yourself from a money perspective if you stop working. So how do you balance that piece? How do you create an ecosystem so that you can continue to work and manage finances is essential before you take this call of either reducing or if cutting off employment or getting into a part-time work or changing work hours, because all of this will have impact on your cash flows. So it's important that you do this. uh, Maintain and replenish emergency funds, which I've already said. I think even to release stress, keep your spirits up, your me time, being able to spend a little bit on yourself, it's important from a financial well-being perspective. uh, if you're earning, or even if you are reaching a stage where your physical self will give way, plan for your own retirement, because retirement, more often than not, is not about the individual who's earning, but it's also about your partner, who are you in relationship with, and therefore you have to plan for how will you uh, continue on that journey without creating dependence on uh, if you have children or any of your siblings or relatives. I think that's a essential part to plan for it and plan for your aging. And and which means buying a medical insurance, because uh, the cost of medical expenses is bound to go up. Creating a will, and having a trusted ally who understands your finances, who has access in the family to all your account information, in case you become suddenly incapacitated, because things happen. We are not always in control of what happens to our life. So it's important that we organize ourselves around this. And last but not the least, have money conversations around the dinner table. And I'll leave you with this quick incident on, we have a daughter who's 14, and these days she thinks we are uncool, we are not familiar with technology. Uh, and a lot of other things. But while she was growing up, when she was barely 3, 4, both of us were working. So we would go to the next door mall and buy her stuff. And we realized, lo and behold, every weekend, she was this pestering and demanding person who ended up, wanting to buy everything she saw. And so we had this conversation that let's teach her the value of money. And I think my partner then sat her down and said, look, this credit card which I use to purchase stuff is backed by the hard work we do. You don't see us during the day because we go to the office and we earn money. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff which we are buying, we need to pay for it. And that money comes from all the hard work we do. So we can't buy you every time you want something. So she didn't get it. So next weekend we are going back to the mall and she says, buy me stuff. So my partner says, sorry, the money is over for this month. And we can't buy you stuff. He said, okay. Really, is the money over between you and dad? She said, yes. So it was a Saturday, and this is the unintended consequence of having these conversations, money conversations with kids. She said, if the money is over, why is dad staying at home on Saturday? Let him go to work and earn more money. So with that, I'll just end this conversation and hope. I'm not an expert, like I said, but I hope I can share some part of my experience. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. If I'm not, I promise to get back to you about it. So thank you so much for a patient listening. Over to you, Bhavna.
Thank you so much. I am going to ask for the audience to either raise hands or type your question in the chat box so that we can then ask Gaurav to help us address the questions that may have come up during this presentation or otherwise. And if not, direct us to where we can get the answers from.
Yeah, I also think like this was a basic, I think, warm-up conversation because I was not sure where all of us, it was heartening to see a lot of you putting 7 and 8 and 9 also in terms of financial well-being. I still am not that confident about it. But I think the next set of conversations can be with experts who actually take you through this journey of how do you discover what is your risk profiling? How do you actually split your money into different assets? How do you asset allocate and plan for your goals? What is a financial plan? What is a method to review it? I think those conversations can be built from here onwards. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Uh, we really appreciate your trying to help caregivers understand. And I do think that the fact that 60 to 80% of the time caregivers are women and they are preoccupied with the illness. I think there can be a lot of anxieties around financial well-being and who do you really go to. And starting small can perhaps be a good place to begin. I noticed there are some kind words in the chat box that say very well explained. Thanks, Gaurav. Great clarity.
Thank you so much. I was really nervous about it because really, like I said, I've been on this journey, and about a decade or a decade and a half ago when I got into financial services, I was in consumer products. I realized that, financial literacy is a big task for us to get people onto this journey. And as a marketer, if that was my task, I said, how can I go on this journey without starting on it myself? And that's where I started taking baby steps. And I'm still on this journey. So thank you. It's heartening to hear that it was useful. I was worried that it might be very basic and not useful for all of you.
I suppose there may be some people who are already equipped as well, and be that as it may, if there are specific questions or feedback and suggestions that you would like for us to take in subsequent sessions. So in addition to your feedback, we would really appreciate, can we get a list of financial advisors? Yes. So at Caregiver Sathi, we are working with the idea, and we hope to be able to give you some connections to qualified financial advisors that you can reach out to. And, like Gaurav mentioned in his presentation, I think it's not about going to one person. Perhaps it is about going to more than one person and establishing who works for you. So there's a little bit of shopping of the financial advisor as well. We would like to offer that. If I'm still waiting, there seem to be no questions at all, Gaurav. You had a very good presentation, very well explained.
No, so I would suggest a couple of things, Bhavna. I think so. It would be nice if we could have a session on, say, the basics of insurance. What part of insurance is important for everyone to have? How do you choose a medical product? What are the features? Because I think it becomes very confusing when you go out to shop and make that choice for yourself. So somebody helping simplify that choice architecture, because more often than not, when we see the number of choices we have, we get into a paralysis of making a decision.
Certainly. I do think that there are too many choices out there today, and there is a need to understand insurance. Very often we find that caregivers are, may not have had access to medical insurance and are disappointed, but they may still need to invest in medical insurance for themselves. So a special session on various insurance products that are available is something that we look forward to scheduling in addition to some of the other instruments. So for the audience, I have initiated a poll. Those of you who might be on your phones may not be able to see. Could you look at the features and see if a poll has come up for you? You could respond to the feedback on the webinar and give us inputs and suggestions. We would really appreciate that. It will help us to customize and design more detailed sessions that can enable your overall well-being. We do hope, and I did notice that Rajat is a part of the audience today and will be one of the speakers um, to help us understand, looking at the legal and the inheritance aspects of financial and legal well-being. So I would like to give you that heads up. So watch the space for more such information coming your way. If you have any questions, you can drop them at info, INFO, at Caregiver Sathi. Sathi is spelled with a double A, SAATHI, sathi.co.in. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there are many ways in which you can get in touch with us. Our website is the best way. However, drop us an email or reach out to us, and we will be happy to address your questions. I'm going to keep the poll and the chat box open for a while for those of you who may need some time. And thank you very much for making the time to be here today. Thank you very much, Gaurav, for taking the time to prepare this and think about caregivers. I think it's important to look at them differently and address their needs separately. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Can I step aside? I might have another meeting to get into.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you. In case you don't have any further questions, you may choose, and we will soon bring this to an end. Thank you very much. I noticed there are no further questions. Thank you, Rajiv. Good to see you here. And thank you, Dr. Jagriti. Good to see you here. Dr. Loni, thank you. As well, Vijay. Pranabda, thank you. Good to see you here, Seema. Thank you very much, each one of you, for making the time today. Have a very good evening and have a good weekend. See you in the next webinar, which will be 2 weeks from now.